Michio Kaga, done with life and society, is just scrolling through the web when he stumbles on this messed up website. It's full of dumb questions and some point system where you build your own badass character. After screwing around and finishing his setup, boom, he gets yanked into the site and wakes up in some wild, game-like world. Now, he's no longer some random nobody, he's a total beast, ready to grab all the legendary chicks and wreck shit. The cheats are real, and so's the harem. Welcome to his new messed up life. The story begins with a young boy named Michio waking up in a strange place. He looks around in confusion, unable to recognize his surroundings. The last thing he remembers is sitting at home in his casual tracksuit, playing an unusual online game. However, his memory of what happened next is completely blank. As Michio takes in his surroundings, he notices something wild. A shimmering interface pops up in the air like it's straight out of a VR dream. His mind starts racing, and it hits him. This isn't just some game anymore, it's the game. He remembers there's an identify option to scan shit, get the lowdown on anything and anyone around him. Curious as hell, he uses it on himself. The profile pops up, and it's like a punch to the gut. Michio Kaga, level 1 thief. His brain goes into overdrive. This is no longer some virtual world he's zoning out in, he's in it for real. The air smells real, the ground feels solid beneath his feet, and holy shit, he can even feel the weight of his own body. So, he starts scoping out the area, his eyes darting to the random stuff scattered around. His identifiability kicks in, and he scans a sword, some legit, badass blade that looks like it could cut through a mountain. He grabs it, not thinking twice. Then, he spots a ring, the ring of determination, slips it on, and his stats get a little buffed. Not sure how it works, but Michio's not about to overthink it. He knows one thing for sure, this place plays by its own rules, and he's gotta be on his toes if he doesn't want to get wrecked. Michio roams around further and finds himself at a quiet village. The atmosphere is strange, with villagers going about their daily routines. Michio hides at first, observing them. Using the identify skill, he learns that most of them are ordinary villagers with no significant combat skills. He begins to think over his next move but is interrupted by Ach in sight. A group of bandits is moving close to the village. The bandits begin to loot and threaten the villagers, who are powerless to stop them. Michio first hesitates, he is unsure of his ability to fight them. However, he quickly realizes that this is his chance to test his skills. He gets himself armed with the powerful sword and boosted stats. He approaches the bandits from behind. He strikes one of them, his blade cutting through with shocking ease. Blood splatters everywhere, and Michio freezes for a moment, disturbed by the current scenes. He gets confused. This isn't like any game he has ever played, why does it feel so real? He gathers all his courage to continue to fight, using techniques he learned in real-life martial arts training. His movements are awkward but effective enough to overpower the untrained bandits. After an intense battle, he defeats them all but is left physically and emotionally tired. He checks his stats again and notices slight improvements, though he still has a long way to go. After the battle, the village chief, a tough-looking guy named Samara, walks up to Michio with a nod of respect. He thanks Michio for saving the village, explaining that they've been getting their asses handed to them by bandit raids for months. To show his gratitude, Samara offers Michio a place to crash at the village and hands him the bandits' loot as a reward. Among the items, Michio spots a bandana that seems like it could be worth something. But when he uses his identifiability, it turns out to be a fake, a knockoff, not the bandana from the bandit leader. Samara's face twists in surprise, and he quickly puts 2 and 2 together, realizing that the real bandana must have been swapped out. He reassures Michio that the village will track down the missing item. At this point, Michio's drained. His muscles ache, and his brain's fried. He decides to take a break, so he tries to log out of the game, but there's no option. Panic hits him like a freight train as he frantically checks the menu, slamming buttons, but nothing happens. Then it hits him, he remembers the warning that flashed on the screen before he started. Once you're in, there's no getting out unless you finish the game. This isn't just a game, Michio says to himself. Before he can fully process this, Samara with a woman, one of the villagers, tells him he's covered in blood and needs to clean up. This makes him further question whether this is real life or just the game. Unable to log out, he accepts that this world is his new reality. He starts thinking about the villagers he killed, wondering if this world is truly different from the one he knew. He also realizes that the villagers, though living simple lives, face constant threats from bandits. He has the power to change their fate but still hasn't decided what his role will be in this new world. Later, the villagers discover the person responsible for stealing the bandana, a man from the same village. Michio uses Identify on the bandana to confirm its authenticity. Instead of punishing the thief himself, Michio asks Samara to handle it according to the village's rules. Samara explains their justice system. The thief's identification card will be marked, lowering his social status and labeling him a criminal. Such individuals often end up as slaves, with half the proceeds going to the victim and the other half to the thief's family. Though Michio feels uneasy about the harshness of this system, he understands that this world operates differently. He decides to let Samara take care of the matter and shifts his focus to his next steps. The next day, Michio sets off for the town of Vale to sell the remaining loot and collect the bounties on the bandits he defeated. There, he met Alan, a slave merchant who offers to guide him. Alan is impressed by Michio's accomplishments, especially his ability to defeat multiple bandits alone. As they make their way into the town, Alan leads Michio to the local trading post, a no-nonsense place where he can unload the bandit spoils. The trader takes a quick look at the loot and informs Michio that only 2 of the bandits had bounties on their heads. Michio collects the reward, feeling a small sense of accomplishment, though he keeps his guard up, careful not to reveal too much about himself. While they're in Vale, Alan introduces Michio to his side business, the trade of slaves. Michio's stomach turns at the thought, but he hides his discomfort. That is, until his eyes land on a slave girl named Roxanne. She's stunning, beautiful in a way that makes everything else in the room fade into the background. There's an elegance about her, an undeniable grace that makes her stand out. Michio knows he doesn't want to buy a slave, but he can't shake the way she looks at him. As Alan continues to talk, Michio starts to realize that in this world, people don't have many choices, especially when it comes to survival. He learns that slaves are bought and sold like any other commodity. They serve their masters until death unless they manage to escape, and even then, they're treated like criminals, hunted down, and likely killed if caught. Alan adds that Roxanne is particularly skilled and obedient, making her a valuable asset. He drops her price, high as hell, but says she's worth every penny. Michio's drawn to her, but his hesitation lingers. He doesn't have the money, but the thought of owning her, of being able to do whatever the hell he wants with her, starts to cloud his mind. After a few moments, he finally asks her price. Alan smirks and tells him that normally she's 600,000 nars, but because he's recommending her so highly, he'll cut him a deal, 422,800 nars, and that includes the outfit she's wearing. You have 5 days to gather the funds, Alan says. If you manage to do so, Roxanne will be yours. But if not, someone else will surely buy her. Then Alan tells Roxanne that Michio is interested in buying her. She thanks Michio, making him feel even more determined to get the money. As he leaves, Michio has no idea how he'll get the money, but he's resolved to make Roxanne his. 10 years pass since Michio first set foot in this land, the place where his whole journey kicked off. The memories hit him like a freight train. He's back again, this time with Roxanne and a few others. The village has changed, but there's still that same feeling that's been with him all those years ago. Michio walks through the village, his mind lost in thought. Then, he spots a kid with black hair, standing out like a sore thumb. It's rare now, and Michio can't ignore it. He approaches the kid, who introduces himself as Mio. The kid says his father died before he was born, and his mother's been taking care of him ever since. He doesn't know much about his father, just empty spaces and unspoken stories. Something about it hits Michio deep. Memories flood back. Without even thinking, Michio hands the kid a sword. It's not some random gesture, it's a promise. If the kid ever gets into trouble, that sword will protect him. The kid hesitates, unsure about accepting such a big gift from a stranger, but Michio doesn't back down. In this world, with danger around every corner, it's a good idea to be prepared. After the kid takes the sword and walks off, Michio feels like he's actually done something good. Roxanne shoots him a look, but Michio doesn't bother explaining. He hasn't met the kid before, but there's a strange connection to his father, like something's come full circle. Without saying much more, Michio and his crew keep moving, letting the past slip back into the dust as they press forward. Back at the inn, Michio's sitting there, eyes glued to the pile of coins in front of him, counting like his life depends on it. 33 gold coins. That's 330,000 nars. Still short by 70,000 nars to buy Roxanne. It's not enough, and it's starting to feel like a kick in the gut. His mind drifts back to Alan's words. The bastard laid out 2 ways to make quick cash. First, there's the labyrinth in the West Forest. Adventurers can make a decent chunk of change off monsters and their drops. But the grind? It's steady, sure, but it's not gonna make him rich anytime soon. It's just enough to keep someone alive, not enough to buy a person. Then, there's the bounty hunting gig. Quick money, but Alan warned him. Too much cash too fast and people start sniffing around. They'll get suspicious, come after him, make his life hell. And even if he did grab a bounty, the pay wasn't even worth the sweat. Now, back in the present, Michio's pissed at how the options suck. 5 days. That's all he's got to scrape together enough cash for Roxanne. The labyrinth is the safer bet, even if it's a pain in the ass. Not the perfect choice, but it's all he's got. Before he hits the road, though, there's some shit he needs to handle first. He remembers realizing this issue when he fought the bandits earlier. His sword is incredibly powerful. Someone might try to steal it, and if they succeed, he would be in big trouble. After all, he put 63 extra points into his sword to make it so strong. To protect himself, Michio opens his character settings and stores his sword in his inventory, making the sword disappear from his hand. Next, Michio goes to the market to buy a regular weapon he can carry around. He enters an armory and uses the appraise skill on the scimitars displayed. He notices that one scimitar has a skill slot, which catches his attention. Michio asks the seller if all the scimitars cost the same, and the seller confirms they do. Seeing an opportunity, Michio buys the scimitar with the skill slot. After purchasing some protective gear, he heads toward the labyrinth. On his way, Michio sees some adventurers come out of a portal. He guesses this must be teleportation magic, and thanks to their appearance, he easily finds the labyrinth entrance. Before going inside, Michio takes out his combat stats and then enters through the portal. Inside the labyrinth, Michio checks his classes and notices he has a new one called Explorer at level 1. He remembers that when he stole sandals earlier, the Thief class was assigned to him. Now, by entering the labyrinth, the Explorer class has been activated. He also notices the Hero class in his stats, which provides good bonuses, so he sets it as his secondary class, leaving Explorer as his third. Looking at the Explorer skills, Michio sees one called Dungeon Walk. When he activates it, a portal appears next to him. He decides to test it by saying he wants to return to the room he was in earlier. When he steps through the portal, he emerges in that same place. However, when he tries to use the portal to go outside the labyrinth, it doesn't work. Michio realizes the skill only works inside the labyrinth. He concludes that the teleportation magic he saw outside must be different. As he explores further, he finds that Dungeon Walk only works at specific locations within the labyrinth. With his sword back in his hand, Michio senses an enemy approaching. Using appraise, he identifies it as a level 1 needle tree. After defeating it, the monster drops a branch. Michio isn't sure what it's for, but he decides to keep it. Soon, another needle tree approaches. This time, Michio tries using a hero skill called Overwhelming. When he activates it, the needle tree seems to move slower, or maybe he has become faster. Before he can attack, he feels a sudden drop in energy. He manages to focus and defeat the monster but realizes the skill drained his MP. Fortunately, the sword's MP absorption helps him recover at a quick rate. After hunting more monsters, Michio goes to the guild to collect his reward. He activates the increase sale value by 30% skill and hands over the pile of branches he collected to the receptionist. He receives 273 nars in return. Back at the inn, Michio calculates that without the 30% increase, he would have only gotten 10 nars per branch. He realizes that even if he defeats 10 monsters an hour and works for 10 hours, he'll only earn 1,000 nars a day. Buying Roxanne seems more difficult than ever. The next morning, Michio leaves the inn very early. It's so dark that he can barely see where he's going. Remembering that he has the transfer skill, an advanced teleportation ability he recently acquired, he heads to the labyrinth. Once inside, his MP quickly depletes, making him feel negative again. To recover, he rushes to defeat more monsters. However, his stamina isn't limitless, and he soon becomes exhausted. While resting, Michio notices he has leveled up. Still, he knows he won't gather the money he needs at this rate. While exploring, he finds out a secret passage. He sees something shiny inside a hidden room and enters, hoping it's treasure. Unfortunately, it's just a broken sword. Suddenly, the entrance behind him closes, and he hears monsters approaching. He realizes he has walked into a monster nest, so he tries to use transfer to escape, but the skill doesn't work during combat. Facing the monsters, Michio decides to rely on the sword's HP absorption to maintain his stamina. He uses the overwhelming skill to eliminate multiple enemies at once. However, the skill's high MP cost puts him in danger. Michio fights strategically, balancing MP usage and stamina, and eventually defeats all the monsters. After collecting the loot, Michio leaves the labyrinth, tired but alive. On his way back, he notices a crowd and goes to investigate. He learns that the body of a bandit was found. Someone explains that the bandit likely lived in the city slums but left with a group recently. They might have been forced out by stricter knights or defeated by a rival group. Michio asks how they identified the bandit. The The man explains that intelligence cards don't disappear immediately when someone dies, so bandits often keep their cards attached to their left arm. Seeing this, Michio gets an idea. If he's already risking his life, he might as well do it in a way that gets him closer to buying Roxanne. With a determined mindset, Michio decides to hunt bandits. Back at the inn, Michio's brain is running a mile a minute. If he wants to stack some serious cash, hunting bandits is his best shot. The problem? He has no clue how to go about it. He starts doubting his skills, wondering if he's even cut out for this. But after a quick mental shake, he decides to go for it. He opens his class settings, scanning through the options. Warrior, swordsman, merchant, hell, he's got more classes than he thought. Looking over the warrior class, Michio grins. The stats are better than his main villager class, and there's even a skill he can use. Without wasting another second, he swaps his classes around, readying himself for the bloodbath to come. The next morning, he heads to the market, eavesdropping on the chatter around him. The villagers are talking bandits, and from the sounds of it, they like to hang out in the northern slums. Michio wastes no time. He activates his transfer skill and teleports straight to the area. The vibe's off, the air thick with tension, but after searching around, he doesn't find a thing. He figures it's better to come back at night when things get interesting. That night, as he sits in the inn, Michio reflects on his recent use of transfer. It's not draining him like it used to, and he's pretty sure it's because of the level up he got from that monster trap incident. He's stronger now, and it shows. As he's gearing up to leave, the innkeeper hands him a lamp for the dark streets outside. On the way, Michio strolls through the red light district, eyes locked on the beautiful women lining the streets. He feels a stir in his chest, but he snaps out of it. No one's gonna take Roxanne's place. He keeps walking, but then he spots someone shady as hell. Michio's instincts kick in, and he uses his appraise skill to get a read. Sure enough, the dude's a bandit. Grinning, Michio decides to tail him, knowing this is the lead he's been waiting for. It doesn't take long before he's standing in front of the bandit hideout. Time to make some fucking money. Using transfer, Michio gets closer to the hideout, sneaking near enough to listen to their conversation. He hears them mention a name, Hugo. Michio recalls that Hugo was the name of the bandit leader he defeated in the village. He remembers seeing Hugo's name when he used appraise on him. This means these bandits are likely connected to Hugo's group or were kicked out of the city. With only 2 days left to buy Roxanne, Michio learns more about how the city works at night. He notices that the red light district starts closing, with customers leaving early. After that, bandits take over the streets, guarding areas, or drinking in bars. The bandits seem to stick to their own territories and avoid crossing paths with other groups. Michio figures that if he only targets one group, the others won't care much. Back at the inn, the owner shoots Michio a look, saying he's late for dinner and invites him to join. Michio takes the opportunity to dig for information about the recent murders. The innkeeper leans in, lowering his voice like he's spilling some dirty secret. Turns out, the killings are part of some nasty power struggle among bandits in the slums. The whole revenge story is just smoke and mirrors. A new leader replaced the old one, and the losers got booted out. The guy found dead the other day? He was one of the winners who stuck around in the city. Now the rival factions are gunning for them, trying to make it look like the exiled group's dirty work. Michio's brain starts clicking into place. He doesn't need to charge in all guns blazing. He can play it smarter, maybe even strike a deal with the bandits. Hell, he might not even need to fight if he plays it right. That night, he lays in bed, daydreaming about the life he plans to live with Roxanne. Then he snaps out of it, reminding himself he's not here for fairy tales. Grabbing the thief's bandana from earlier, he heads out, ready to make a move. At the bandit hideout, Michio walks up to the guard at the entrance and casually flashes the bandana. The guard's eyes widen as soon as he spots it. Michio smirks, knowing he has leverage. He offers to trade the bandana for a gold coin and some intel. The guard, looking like he's been waiting for this moment, agrees, asking what Michio wants to know. Michio, cool as ever, drops the name Hugo. The guard grunts, then tells him to follow. Apparently, their boss, who knows Hugo, is crashed out, so no meeting just yet. Looks like Michio's got to wait, but he's patient. He knows how to make things work in his favor. Once inside, the guard asks Michio to show the bandana again to confirm it's real. When Michio reaches for it, the bandit tries to snatch it from him. Thanks to Michio's quick reflexes, he avoids losing the bandana. The bandit, thinking Michio is unarmed, seems confident. Michio cleverly throws the bandana near a lamp, making it look like it might burn. The bandit panics and rushes to save it. While he's distracted, Michio draws the sword from his inventory and quickly stabs the bandit in the back, cutting off his hand. It turns out Michio didn't actually throw the bandana onto the lamp, he tricked the bandit. Afterward, Michio sneaks into the main room where the rest of the bandits are. Using appraise, he confirms that they are all bandits or thieves. One by one, he swiftly eliminates them, decapitating them with the sword's sharp blade. However, one of them makes a noise before dying, alerting the others. Acting quickly, Michio uses transfer to move to another room, surprising the last bandit and finishing him off. After the fight, Michio collects the bandits' hands, which have their intelligence cards attached. Knowing he can't take more risks, he uses transfer to escape to the labyrinth, where he rests in a safe spot. Exhausted, he wonders about the terrible act he just committed. His MP had dropped. Michio reminds himself that in this world, killing bandits isn't seen as a big deal, unlike in his original world. Still, he can't help but feel uneasy. The next day, Michio goes to the Knights Guild to claim the bounties. He recognizes one of the knights who helped him before and explains that some bandits picked a fight with him the previous night. Michio shows the knight their intelligence cards. The knight verifies Michio's card to ensure everything is in order. After confirming, the knight tells Michio that 2 of the 3 were wanted bandits and pays him the bounty money. Michio steps aside to count the money and realizes he finally has enough to buy Roxanne. Excited, he rushes to Alan, who counts the money and confirms it's the right amount. Alan then goes to fetch Roxanne. When Alan returns with Roxanne, she apologizes to Michio. She explains that while she trusted he would come for her, there was one moment when she doubted him. Michio reassures her that everything is fine, and he stands by her side. Alan begins the formal process of completing the contract. He asks Michio and Roxanne to check their intelligence cards, then recites a spell. When it's done, Michio checks Roxanne's card and sees that he is now listed as her owner. His own card shows Roxanne as his slave. With the contract finalized, Alan thanks Michio for purchasing one of his slaves. As Michio listens, he feels a wave of happiness. Roxanne is finally his. Later, Michio returns to the inn with Roxanne. The owner asks if they want a double room, and Michio agrees. In the new room, he notices it's larger, but Roxanne looks more scared than nervous. As they sit, Michio comments that there's only one bed. Roxanne explains that he requested it that way. Michio realizes the owner did it on purpose, which is probably why she's nervous. Michio notices Roxanne's ears and can't resist asking for permission to pet them, reminding himself to stay calm. He tells Roxanne that he's from a faraway place and doesn't know the customs here, so he asks her to explain anything he might not understand. He also tells her that she'll be joining him in the labyrinth, so she needs to keep that in mind. Roxanne agrees with confidence. Michio notices she's barefoot and learns that she's been like that since he bought her. He offers her his sandals, even though they're too big. Roxanne says not to worry because equipment adjusts to the wearer, which is normal here. She adds that since these are the first items he's given her, she'll take good care of them. As Roxanne turns to leave, Michio suddenly hugs her from behind. He thinks it's normal for her to be tense, but she doesn't resist. She understands that she's a slave. Michio tells her he won't let her go, and she nods without complaining. As they head to the market, Michio tells her she can use one of his swords but asks about her defense. Roxanne says she can use a shield but is very careful when choosing one. Michio uses his appraise skill to help her pick the best option. After buying the shield and other equipment, they shop for a new cloak since her old one is stained with blood. Michio lets Roxanne choose what she likes. After a while, she asks for his opinion between 2 cloaks. Michio thinks for a moment, points out the best features of each, and finally recommends one. Roxanne agrees and says she also likes it. Michio tells her to let him know if she needs anything else, adding that today is a special day and they should celebrate. Roxanne blushes and says she needs new undergarments and more clothes since she only has what she's wearing. Michio buys her 2 extra sets of clothes. After shopping, they return to the inn. Michio asks Roxanne to sit, but she sits on the floor in front of him. He insists she sit next to him and assures her she'll also sleep in his bed. Roxanne says it's okay if she sleeps on the floor since that's what she's heard other slaves do. Michio reassures her that he's not like that, and they will share the bed. Suddenly, Roxanne gets up and says she'll clean the equipment while there's still light. She sits at the table, examines the sword Michio chose for her, and comments that it's decent but not excellent. She says their lives depend on the equipment, so it needs to be in good condition. She also suggests using her old undergarments for cleaning since he bought her new ones. Roxanne offers to clean while Michio has dinner, but he asks her to join him so they can eat together. She agrees, then starts taking off her clothes. Michio is startled, realizing her old clothes are the ones she's wearing. When she turns to look at him, he tells her to pretend he's not there and turns away to give her privacy. She finishes changing quickly, and Michio thinks the best part of the day is yet to come. That evening, the owner brings hot water for 2. Michio asks Roxanne to wash his back, deciding not to feel awkward about being in his undergarments in front of her. He mentions wanting a hot bath and asks if she knows about bathtubs. Roxanne explains that bathtubs require a lot of hot water, which is hard to prepare unless he's rich. After a long, well-deserved bath, the night they'd both been waiting for finally arrives. Michio and Roxanne share a night full of passion, finally letting all their pent-up emotions out. The morning after, Michio wakes up feeling a sense of gratitude. It's like something he's been longing for finally fell into place. When Roxanne stirs and kisses him fiercely, just like she promised, Michio's mind races, but he holds himself back, deciding to save those feelings for another time. As they get ready for the day, Michio looks over at Roxanne and asks if she's cool with heading into the labyrinth. She gives him a nod, confirming she's up for it. While they're preparing, Michio brings up how to add skills to his equipment. Roxanne casually explains that it's done with skill crystals, rare little gems created by monsters. These crystals can fuse with gear, granting new abilities. But here's the catch, the fusion's success depends entirely on the blacksmith skill. Michio starts thinking about taking up blacksmithing himself, but when he asks Roxanne how to get into it, she explains that it's a job that only dwarves are suited for. He quickly realizes that if he wants to upgrade his gear, he's gonna need a dwarf to do the job. Roxanne warns him that going down that route might be a pain in the ass. A lot of dwarves mess up the fusion process, and some might even try to rip him off, pretending it didn't work just to sell the equipment on the side for a quick buck. Later, Michio takes Roxanne to an alley and uses transfer to reach the labyrinth immediately. Roxanne is confused because she thought dungeon walk only worked inside the labyrinth. Michio explains that he used transportation magic, but Roxanne says she has never heard of it. He tells her that maybe only some people can use it and asks her to keep it a secret. Roxanne sniffs the air and says she can smell a monster nearby to the right. She explains that her strong sense of smell is a special ability of her kind and that tracking prey is her specialty. She also asks Michio for a magic crystal, explaining that as monsters are defeated, their magic gathers into crystals, which are valuable to guild temples. Without a crystal, she can't gather magic from defeated monsters. Michio is surprised and realizes he's been wasting the magic all this time. When he asks if magic crystals are expensive, Roxanne says they are, but they take a long time to fill up, so he hasn't lost much. She adds that crystals can either be found in the labyrinth or bought empty from the guild. When they encounter their first monster, Roxanne is on guard, but Michio defeats it easily with the sword. He tells her the sword is powerful and asks her to keep that a secret too. He also notices her tail wagging happily as they walk and assumes she's thrilled. Later, they return to the inn with a large haul of branches. Roxanne tells him that in her previous group, she was the newbie and wasn't allowed to give input during battles. She was only asked to attack from behind. She thanks Michio for treating her differently. He asks if he can pet her ears, which makes her happy. While petting her, Michio assures her he won't let her go, which pleases her. He also tells her he plans to add more members to their group to maximize their fighting power. Roxanne agrees, which Michio takes as her approval of him building a harem. Michio later buys some magic crystals and shows them to Roxanne. She explains that the crystals change color as they fill with magic, red after 10 kills, purple after 100, and so on. They turn white after 1,000,000 kills, but most people sell them when they turn green, 10,000 kills, or purple, 100,000 kills. Back in the labyrinth, Roxanne suggests moving to the upper floors because the first level monsters are too easy for Michio. He thought the floors went downward, but Roxanne explains they go upward as the labyrinth grows. Labyrinths are believed to be living beings that use monsters to kill humans and feed on them. She also says there are other labyrinths in the world because they reproduce. To kill a labyrinth, you must defeat all the floor bosses up to the top level. Michio asks if there are spells that attack all enemies at once. Roxanne says there are, but she doesn't know much about them. Michio tries using offensive magic from his menu but fails, assuming he doesn't have enough MP. Roxanne tells him they've defeated 10 needle trees, so he checks his magic crystal, which is now red. Hers is still black because the magic only goes to the one who delivers the final blow. Michio remembers a skill in his menu called accelerated crystallization and activates it. After defeating more monsters, his crystal quickly turns purple. He tells Roxanne it's a secret and asks how much crystals sell for. She says green crystals sell for 10,000 nars, and yellow ones for 100,000. Since Michio doesn't need money urgently, he deactivates the crystal acceleration. He also unlocks a menu option called Party Settings, which lets him see Roxanne's classes and stats. When she mentions healing, Michio decides to unlock the monk class, which grants healing abilities. He asks Roxanne to fight barehanded with him to unlock the class. After a few attempts, Roxanne gains the monk class by delivering the final blow to a monster. Michio adjusts his stats and finishes a monster with his fists, unlocking the monk class and healing ability for himself. Michio heals a wound from the last fight and explains to Roxanne that he can now use healing magic. She tells him her class is still Beast Warrior, so Michio realizes his ability to change classes is unique to him. He asks her to keep it a secret. Later, they return to the inn, have their usual bath, and spend another eventful night. The next day, they explore the labyrinth again and find a strange room. Roxanne explains it's a waiting room for groups to prepare before fighting the floor boss. She adds that only one group can enter the boss chamber at a time. If more than one group tries to enter, the boss won't appear, and the door to the next level won't open. Groups must wait their turn in the waiting room where they are now. As Michio and Roxanne step into the boss room, Roxanne mentions an interesting possibility. If they're lucky, they might find equipment left behind by adventurers who were wiped out. It's a grim reminder of the dangers lurking in the labyrinth. Moments later, the boss is summoned, revealing itself to be a level 1 trat. Michio immediately realizes that his usual one-hit strategy won't work here, as the trat withstands his first attack. Meanwhile, Roxanne showcases her remarkable agility, effortlessly dodging the trat's heavy blows. Her movements are fluid and precise, a stark contrast to the lumbering attacks of the monster. Seizing an opportunity, Michio activates his flurry skill, unleashing a series of rapid and powerful strikes with the sword. The trat is formidable, but Michio's persistence pays off as he lands a decisive blow, defeating the boss on his second attempt. The experience is both thrilling and humbling for Michio, who realizes that even with the sword's immense power, he can't afford to underestimate the challenges ahead. After the battle, Roxanne notices something on the ground, a leaf. When Michio appraises it, he discovers that it possesses the beast attack skill. Roxanne picks it up, gaining the herbalist class in the process. She explains that herbalists are skilled in crafting medicines from materials like this leaf. Intrigued, Michio asks about beast attack, and Roxanne elaborates. It's a skill exclusive to beast warriors, designed to inflict significant damage on monsters. However, using it requires reciting a spell. The process is intricate, as the spell must be pronounced perfectly, with the right accentuation and nuance, or it won't activate. Roxanne admits that beginners like her avoid relying on such skills since the casting process leaves them vulnerable to attacks. The two then proceed to the second level of the labyrinth. However, Michio recalls how Roxanne acquired the herbalist class by picking up the leaf and wonders if he can do the same. Deciding to test his theory, he attempts to return to the level 1 boss room through the portal. To his dismay, he finds himself back at the labyrinth's entrance instead. Realizing his mistake, Michio quickly concocts an excuse, pretending that his experiment failed. Roxanne, trusting him, believes his explanation. Determined to gain the herbalist class, Michio and Roxanne face the level 1 boss again. This time, Michio notices the trat preparing to cast a spell. Acting swiftly, he attacks and interrupts its magic, exploiting the sword's unique properties. The sword's stats specify multiple abilities, including X5 attack power, HP and MP absorption, and spell interruption. After defeating the trat, Michio picks up a leaf and successfully gains the herbalist class. Using the class's create medicine skill, he turns the leaf into an antidote for poison. The ease of the process surprises him, and he wonders aloud about monsters that use poison. Roxanne confirms that poison is a common trait among many monsters, prompting them to prepare. They visit a nearby store to purchase medicines, spending a total of 640 nars. As Roxanne counts the money, Michio reflects on the discounts he received from the slave trader and innkeeper, wondering why the store owner didn't offer the same. He realizes that merchants possess a skill called calculation, which allows them to perform complex calculations instantly. This likely makes them resistant to the effects of bargaining skills, explaining the lack of a discount. Back in the labyrinth, they venture deeper into the second level. Along the way, they encounter new monsters, including a green caterpillar. Thanks to his appraisal skill, Michio identifies it immediately. Despite being on a higher level, the monsters fall easily to Michio's attacks with the sword. The battles give him time to theorize about enemy group sizes, and he assumes that groups will grow larger with each level. Roxanne corrects him, explaining that groups of 3 start appearing from level 4 onward, and groups of 4 from level 8. Following this pattern, Michio deduces that level 16 might feature groups of 5 and level 32 groups of 6. The two soon face a pair of green caterpillars. Michio quickly dispatches his target, but Roxanne warns him to stay alert. Her caterpillar begins casting a spell, launching a web that traps Michio. The caterpillar seizes the opportunity to attack, leaping onto Michio. Reacting swiftly, Michio uses his feet to block the creature and finishes it off with the sword. The incident serves as a reminder of the dangers they face, even against seemingly weaker enemies. After leaving the labyrinth, they head to Vale Plaza. As they walk, Michio suddenly pushes Roxanne against a wall, startling her. He quietly directs her attention to a suspicious man watching Alan's mansion. Using his appraisal skill, Michio identifies the man as a level 3 thief. Concerned, he decides to warn Alan. At the mansion, Alan listens calmly to Michio's warning. He reveals that his line of work often earns him enemies, so it's not unusual for his mansion to be watched. Alan shares a troubling detail: the thief might be connected to a bandit Michio purchased earlier. The bandit had a history of theft in a nearby village, and Alan suspects that he has ties to the group watching his mansion. Despite the potential threat, Alan remains confident. He explains that his combat slaves are highly skilled, and the mansion's central location offers additional security. Roxanne, however, can't shake off her concern for the mansion staff, especially an elderly woman who had shown her kindness in the past. Michio, seeing how much it means to her, steps up without hesitation. He offers to act as a bodyguard, making it clear that he's got her back no matter what. Alan, seeing the determination in Michio's eyes, agrees to the arrangement, tossing Michio 1,000 nars as payment. To sweeten the deal, Alan lets him keep the intelligence cards of any bandits they take down. Alan guides them through a discreet exit to avoid drawing attention from any thieves lurking around. Once they're outside, Roxanne turns to Michio, her face full of regret. She apologizes for her earlier outburst, admitting she jumped to conclusions about the man being a bandit without consulting him first. Michio gives her a reassuring smile, praising her instincts and telling her to trust herself. His words seem to ease her mind, and she lights up with a smile that could melt anyone's heart. That evening, they return to the inn, and the next morning, they're all geared up for their new bodyguard gig. When they arrive at the mansion, Alan introduces them to his combat slaves, 4 massive, intimidating figures with an aura of raw power and discipline. Alan makes it clear that these slaves will handle the brunt of any immediate threats, asking Michio and Roxanne to stay on standby. As the mansion's walls loom ahead, Michio can't help but reflect on how far he's come, from battling monsters in the labyrinth to now taking on this unexpected role. Michio and Roxanne get the word, bandits have been caught, and shit's about to go down. Everyone gears up for a brawl. Alan pulls Michio and Roxanne aside, telling them to haul their asses to the upper floor because they've got the lower floor covered. He makes it clear, if one of those bastards escapes and makes it upstairs, the people there are screwed. Michio doesn't argue and heads up. Of course, it doesn't take long for chaos to hit. One of those sneaky bastards slips through and ends up right in front of Michio. The guy looks pathetic, but Michio knows he can't screw around. He considers pulling out equivalent exchange, a skill he hasn't dared to touch before. The risk is insane. If the bandit's health was too high, Michio could have straight up killed himself by burning too much MP or HP. Lucky for him, the bandit's about as strong as wet cardboard. Michio pulls the trigger, and the guy gets absolutely wrecked. The aftermath is a shitshow. Michio can't stop thinking about how close he came to eating dirt. He shakes it off and moves on to back everyone else up. Alan shows up, pissed about an escaped bandit, only to see chunks of the guy splattered everywhere. Alan's side-eye says it all. He's convinced Michio used some self-destruct move. Michio stays quiet, too busy thinking about how he could have been the one lying in pieces. With the bandits wiped out, Michio grabs his reward and dips with Roxanne. They head straight to a labyrinth, where the grind doesn't let up. Michio slices through monsters, but his MP tanks fast. He's forced to rely on Durendal to keep from getting his ass handed to him, scraping by in the blood and sweat of another day. Then, he uses a spell to increase his MP and heals himself completely. After that, he starts thinking that by using equivalent exchange, he has gained the class of a mage and, along with that, many skills. Now, he can use water, fire, air, and earth magic. So, he uses his new power to cast Fireball, and it causes a big blast. Michio feels good because now he can cast spells too. Then, Roxanne asks how he cast the spell since only a mage can do that. Michio replies that it is just a little special and asks Roxanne not to tell anyone about it. After that, Michio attacks the monster with fire magic, burns it repeatedly, and defeats it completely. He thinks that he has Fire Strike and Fire Stone and uses them. Later, 2 monsters come in front of Michio. He attacks them with Fire Strong, and both of them are immediately defeated. Then, Michio uses another magic, named Water. By using it, a wall of water is formed there. Michio asks if they can drink it, but Roxanne tells him to stop. Michio agrees and starts filling containers with water, saying that from now on, they will not need to carry water all the time. After this, they complete their preparations and decide to increase their experience. By doing this, they increase their level and destroy the monsters coming in their way. Then, it is noted that those who use magic, like mages, keep a staff with them to use magic better. Michio says that if that is the case, then they will buy a staff in 4 days. But Roxanne says that if they want to buy the staff, then they should complete their work first. They decide to take the staff because there is a big labyrinth there and many good things. Explorers like Michio and Roxanne definitely go there. Later, they move ahead and reach in front of the washroom. Then, they decide that they will send many to fight. After that, they go inside the washroom, and a caterpillar comes there, which is the boss mob. Michio uses firewall there so that they can escape from the boss's attack. Then, they find a chance and go behind the boss, attacking him on the back and killing him right there. After the boss monster is defeated, the thread falls down from it. Michio then tells Roxanne that they will go to the 3rd floor. Roxanne says that maybe those people have found kobolds, and her statement is true because they find kobolds on the 3rd floor. Then, the kobolds also have a knife with them, but Michio is not bothered by it and uses fireball to kill the monster right there. He gives the knife to the player and says that this thing called kobolds is very weak. Salt falls on it when the monster dies there, which is the cheapest thing in the Adventurers Guild. After that, the group kills many monsters there, including kobolds. Then, a knife also falls, and Roxanne tells Michio that sometimes monsters drop such items. Before leaving, Michio stops and asks Roxanne about her level. She says that she is a level 20 explorer but does not want anyone to know about it. Michio also thinks that his level is a bit higher than hers, so he does not want others to know about it either. Later, they hear a call for help. A person is offering to escort people to the Imperial City using L Field Walk. Michio says that this is a very good way to earn money, but he has no immediate need for resources in the Imperial City. Then, Roxanne says that Curator is very close to the Imperial City, and they should head there. Michio agrees. Then, Michio uses teleportation and gives the elf a silver coin, asking him to go to the Imperial City. After this, Michio temporarily removes Roxanne from his party so that he won't have to pay more. The elf then sends a message for party formation, and Michio accepts in order to travel with them to the Imperial City. Then, they stop at the Adventurers Guild, which Michio finds impressive. After finishing their tasks, Michio decides that he should return to Roxanne now. Later, Michio starts feeling very weak because his MP has been depleted. As he begins to fall, Roxanne catches him just in time, asking if he is okay. Getting up, Michio tells Roxanne that they can return to Curator anytime, so he suggests that they stay at the inn for today, an idea that Roxanne happily agrees with. Later at the inn, Michio is by cleaning Roxanne up with a wet towel. While cleaning her back, he confers if he is applying the right amount of pressure. At first, the conversation is casual, but it doesn't take long before it turns intimate. Suddenly, Michio gently asks Roxanne to kiss him. As the kiss comes to an end, the happy time begins. The two make their way to the bed and spend some quality time there. However, Michio decides not to push it further since Roxanne is making too much noise. Michio realizes that the neighbors can easily hear their voices, so he decides it's best for him to wait for he and Roxanne to be alone in a house of their own. Then, he can enjoy his time with Roxanne as openly as he wants. The very next day, the two make their way into the Curator Market. There, Roxanne points to her left and tells Michio that the labyrinth is that way. She adds that the Curator Labyrinth is at the center of this town. Moreover, all the major roads radiate out from it. Making their way to the labyrinth's entrance, Michio discovers that there is an entrance fee. Just then, Roxanne whispers into Michio's ear, reminding him that they can avoid paying the entrance fee by using his teleportation magic and entering the dungeon, unnoticed. Michio and Roxanne are strolling through Curator's Market, which is packed with people. Roxanne casually mentions that Curator's Labyrinth is right in the center of town. As they make their way to the labyrinth entrance, they notice a knight stationed at the door, collecting a silver coin from everyone wanting to enter. Michio mutters that if they have to pay every time they enter the labyrinth, they'll be broke in no time. Roxanne, ever the know-it-all, explains that once they're inside, they can teleport out and won't have to pay again. Michio grins, agreeing with her, and says he can do the teleportation thing too, just like she described. Next, they swing by a store to pick up a staff for magic. After buying it, they head to a different part of town where people are buying houses. Michio starts eyeing the area, intrigued by the combination of residential homes and a shopping district. He decides to ask the manager if it's possible for them to buy a house and settle down there. The manager looks at him and says they can buy a house, but first, they'll need to check his intelligence card. Michio barely holds back his frustration, then asks what kind of house he can get for 40,000 coins. The manager then throws a bunch of questions at him, like whether only the two of them are planning to live there, or if they want to be close to the labyrinth or farther away. Michio shrugs, saying he doesn't mind staying a little farther out, as long as the house is decent. He then asks if they can take a look at the house first. The manager assures him there is no problem with that and takes them to see a slightly bigger house. Then, as the manager shows them the house, Michio leaves Roxanne to talk to the manager and goes upstairs to see the rooms. He notices that he can still keep an eye on Roxanne through the party option, even with the wall in between. Michio likes the upstairs rooms and thinks that one of them must be the bedroom. However, he also realizes the house is a little far from the labyrinth. Since he has not seen the labyrinth's interior yet, he cannot teleport directly there, and staying far away might make people suspicious of his teleportation magic if he appears suddenly. Michio decides to be careful about hiding this ability. Afterward, the manager informs Michio that the house has a teleporter inside. Michio learns that he needs to pay 45,000 coins to stay in the house for a year. After thinking it over, Michio agrees. The manager thanks him for renting the house and instructs him to get his intelligence card checked by the night. Later, after the manager leaves, Michio thinks that from today, this house belongs to him and Roxanne. Michio gets his intelligence card checked, and he passes. They sign a contract, and Michio uses teleportation to go to the house. Inside, he tells Roxanne that he was checking whether the house is made of shielding cement because teleportation does not work with shielding cement. Michio explains that he recently learned this and wanted to confirm it. After verifying the house is not made of shielding cement, Michio tells Roxanne this is why he bought the house, so teleportation can be used easily. Roxanne finds it amazing but advises him not to tell anyone. After that, Michio and Roxanne go to Vale City. They enter a building on the 3rd floor, where Michio considers using the staff. Soon, they encounter a level 3 monster. Using the staff, Michio attacks the monster with fireball, casting the spell repeatedly. The monster almost jumps on Michio, but he attacks again and kills it, taking the threat it drops. Roxanne praises Michio, saying his strength is amazing. Then, both return to the same inn in Vale City where they had stayed before. Michio notes that this will be the last time they stay there. He recalls fond memories of the inn, as it was the first place he stayed with Roxanne. They inform the innkeeper that they will not be staying anymore. The innkeeper thanks them, saying he enjoyed having them there. Michio and Roxanne return to their new house and use water wall to arrange for water. A water tank is installed and filled daily. They discuss how they will no longer face water shortages. Michio tells Roxanne that he is going to the Curator Labyrinth to check something. Michio stands in the same line as others at the labyrinth gate. There are knights and guides present, and Michio observes them all. He gives a silver coin and enters the labyrinth. Inside, it looks like a maze with many people exploring. Michio goes to a secluded spot and uses teleportation to return home. He informs Roxanne that they will no longer have to pay to enter the labyrinth. Roxanne welcomes Michio home like a maid. Michio thinks Roxanne looks amazing and would look even better in proper maid attire. He asks where she learned to welcome people this way. Roxanne replies that she learned it in Vale City's trading house and says it is not strange to welcome people home. Michio compliments her, saying it is wonderful and appreciates her effort. Later, Michio uses money to buy furniture for the house. When the furniture is delivered, Michio instructs the delivery person to leave it at the door, as he doesn't want anyone inside. Michio and Roxanne arrange the furniture themselves to avoid suspicion about their teleportation abilities. By evening, everything is set up, and they both lie down on their beds. After sharing a good time together, they fall asleep. As the moment starts winding down, Michio snaps out of it and tells Roxanne that, as much as he doesn't want this to end, they've gotta hit the labyrinth entrance. At the entrance of Curator's Labyrinth, they're met with a mess of people, every party worker crowded together like they're stuck in a bad reality show. Everyone's trying to get their money's worth, hanging around as long as they can since it takes a silver coin to get in. A bunch of guides are around, selling their maps and talking about how much of a shitshow this place is. One guide grumbles that nobody has a clue how deep this hellhole goes, or what kind of freaky-ass boss is waiting at the top. The highest anyone's gotten is the 91st floor, set by some lucky bastards. Michio and Roxanne share a look, knowing they're about to face an insane grind. After fighting their way through the chaos, they finally make it to the boss's waiting room. Michio gets ready for a brutal fight, expecting some savage monster that's gonna make them sweat. But when they step inside, it's a joke, just a few idiots standing around. Bolt, some loudmouth trying way too hard, spots Michio, calls him a warrior, and acts like Michio's gonna single-handedly wreck the place. Then, the boss shows up. Or, should I say, stumbles in like it's hungover. It's slower than a slug. Michio doesn't even break a sweat, he shoots it with a missile, and boom, the boss is toast. Michio scoffs, calling it the weakest piece of shit he's ever had to fight. Roxanne can't hold back a grin, she's definitely enjoying watching this dumpster fire. Then Roxanne tells Michio that maybe they will get only gold on the second floor too. Michio agrees and says that if that is the case, then they will go to the second floor tomorrow. However, first, they decide to go back home. Michio uses teleportation to return home. Once there, Roxanne seems like she wants to tell Michio something, but she hesitates. Michio asks her what exactly she wanted to say. Roxanne says it is not important and that he should go and rest. However, she had wanted to tell him that she was leaving. There are some seeds to be planted, and Michio asks her if she is referring to the herbal seeds that the district manager gave them. Roxanne replies that he is right. Before going to the labyrinth, the district manager had given her a lot of seeds. Michio says that he is a little tired, but he will help her plant the seeds. After that, both of them start working in the yard of their house. Roxanne does her work very well and carefully. Seeing this, Michio becomes very happy because she does everything so well. After they finish their work, they sit and admire what they have done. Michio comments that he is very tired from doing all this work but feels very good seeing the results of their hard work. Later, in the thief's box, Roxanne goes in front of the washroom on the third floor of Velvet and defeats the boss there. Roxanne is quite surprised because Michio defeated the boss very easily. Michio tells Roxanne that today's work is done, and they should go home and have dinner. Michio receives a flower for defeating the boss, and he comments that it can be used to make something tasty. After going home, Michio prepares cream and tells Roxanne about the last thing she eats every day. She starts liking it a lot and tells Michio that he cooks very good food. Michio tells her that she can eat as much as she wants. Roxanne thanks him, and they share a pleasant moment. In the next scene, we are shown a level 4 enemy on the 4th floor of Velvet attacking Michio's friends. Michio cuts him in half with his sword, defeating him in one strike. Afterward, they leave the labyrinth and buy something to eat from the market. They start eating it after coming home. After that, both of them go to the labyrinth and start fighting with the boss monster there. Michio reflects that, until now, he thought he was not afraid of the boss because he felt worthy according to the world. However, he realizes he was completely wrong. This revelation comes because Roxanne never talks while fighting, instead concentrating fully on the battle. She works happily without complaining and attacks the boss strongly, ultimately killing him. Michio notes that Roxanne kills the boss easily because she does not let the boss distract her. He tells her to be careful after the boss dies because he does not want her to get hurt. Hearing Michio's words makes Roxanne feel good. Finally, Michio notes that the exploration for today ends here. Later, Michio is seen waiting for something, prompting Roxanne to question what's arriving. Before Michio can respond, a horse cart pulls up right in front of them with Michio's ordered item. It is a bathtub and it's huge. After the delivery guy lifts it down the cart, Michio goes to inspect it and sees that it's very sturdy. The delivery guy explains that it's supposed to be that way so it won't break. After a while, Michio and Roxanne places the bathtub inside the house. There, Roxanne stands, dumbfounded. She seems to have no idea what this thing is, so she decides to question Michio about it. He explains that this is used for bathing. Wasting no time, Michio asks Roxanne to bring the jugs. After that, he proceeds to use his water wall to fill those jugs. Following that, Michio goes on to use Fireball to warm the water. Suddenly, steam starts coming out of the water. Michio then pours down the water from these jugs into the bathtub. Then, he starts to feel pain in his head. Moreover, he wonders if he is such a big pervert to have planned all this just to take a bath with Roxanne. Deciding that even perverts have pride, Michio continues to warm up the water using fireballs. After preparing the bathtub, Michio turns to Roxanne after she walks in. He tells her that she has to get inside the bathtub as well. But, Roxanne thinks that it will be worrisome for Michio. Michio explains that he prepared enough water for the two of them to comfortably bathe in. Roxanne then tells Michio that she will be glad to join him in the bathtub. Later, Michio is washing himself, while thinking how he has planned this all. Soon, Roxanne walks in, half naked. Michio then quickly gets out of the bathtub and tells Roxanne to get in. Not just that, he also shows her the soap that he has acquired. But, this is also a part of his plan. Michio wants to kill two birds with one stone, so he has prepared some soap, so that he can wash Roxanne as her body gets covered in foam. Michio then asks Roxanne to lose her towel and decides to check the soap on himself first, since he believes it is an experiment. After finding out that the soap is okay, Michio begins applying it on Roxanne. Not long after, he makes his way to Roxanne's jugs and begins scrubbing them with soap, while Roxanne tries to control her emotions. To make matters worse, Michio asks Roxanne how it feels. Trying to suppress her voice as much as she can, she tells Michio that the soap is completely painless. Taking matters further, Michio hugs Roxanne and begins sliding his body against hers, mentioning that this is a traditional way for close men and women to clean themselves together. Roxanne then decides to chime in as well, getting down on her knees and removing Michio's towel. She then continues to rub her body against Michio, stating that she would like to wash him as well. After a while, they make their way inside the bathtub, where Roxanne lies on top of Michio. There, Michio thinks how his idea ended up being great. Just then, Roxanne turns around and passionately kisses Michio, mentioning that she forgot to wash his lips. Later that night, Michio and Roxanne are sleeping together, with the former being wide awake. Michio is busy thinking how he is putting a lot of pressure on Roxanne and realizes that he needs to add more frontline fighters to his party to solve this issue. Michio is out there torching rabbits with a fireball, acting like he's starring in some twisted cooking show. Among the charred fluff, he picks up a rabbit belt and smugly notes that they've been stacking up these belts like some medieval hoarders. Turns out, there's a reason behind the madness. Noble women drool over rabbit belts for whatever bougie reason, and clothing stores pay top coin for them. Michio, ever the opportunistic bastard, sees the fat stacks rolling in and decides they're hitting the jackpot with this gig. They make a pit stop at a clothing store and chat up the shop manager, who drops a bomb. They need 100 rabbit belts to make a sale. Michio and Roxanne don't even flinch. Back to the grind it is. Inside the labyrinth, Michio runs into a slow rabbit. It looks like a cute little fluffball, but nah, it's just another monster waiting to get roasted. One quick fireball later, and the thing is toast. While navigating the maze, Michio notices the ground looks off, like some shady dealer hid loot there. He stops Roxanne, and boom, treasure chest. Inside, there's loot that makes the whole morning hustle worth it. But the fun doesn't stop there. They hit the 7th floor of Rutherford, stepping into the boss room like a couple of badasses. The boss is a level 7 rapid rabbit that's faster and angrier than Michio after a bad trade deal. It charges, but Michio's overwhelming makes short work of the bastard. The reward is the rabbit meat, because why not add cannibalistic feel to the mix? Roxanne brings the meat home, starts cooking it, and learns to make a very good dish from it. She enjoys eating it and says that they should gather more rabbit meat and rabbit belts. While stopping rabbit monsters on their way, they reach the boss's gate. There is a huge crowd there, and a man in front of them turns back and starts talking to the workers. After listening to the man's conversation, Michio feels that the man also needs to buy slaves but hasn't been able to yet. It seems to be like a mission for him. The man tells Michio that if he can defeat this boss monster, he will finally be able to get his first party member. When it is the man's turn, he goes inside. Michio thinks about what the man said, that he has been above the 7th floor for 2 years. This means the man might be a little stronger now. Michio wonders if the man succeeded. However, when Michio and Roxanne go inside, they find that a boss monster was already waiting for them. It attacks, but Michio uses overwhelming to defeat it and turn it into meat. After defeating the boss, Michio notices some equipment nearby and tells Roxanne that it probably belonged to the man who came before them. Michio assumes that the man was defeated by the boss monster. They find a black magic crystal and stop to examine it. Michio explains that if their magic crystal is placed near another crystal, they will merge. He then reflects on how the man had mentioned being able to form a party after defeating the boss monster. Michio feels that the man lost his life in the labyrinth for such a small gain. They decide to go back home. The next day, they return to the labyrinth, where they encounter 2 new monsters. Michio thinks about the man who was killed the previous day and realizes that he too could be killed like that man if he is not careful. This motivates Michio to become stronger and never show weakness. As time passes, Michio feels he is getting stronger, and fighting is becoming easier for him. Later, Michio defeats rapid rabbits, earning rabbit friends as a reward. Michio collects more than 300 rabbit friends. Roxanne suggests they go to the Imperial City to sell them at the clothing store there. When they arrive at the shop, the manager welcomes them. Michio informs the manager that they have brought 300 rabbit friends to sell. The manager accepts the rabbit friends but tells them it will take some time to count them. Michio tells the manager that there is no problem, and they browse the shop in the meantime. Michio starts buying clothes for Roxanne. Later, the manager returns and thanks them for waiting. He informs them that there are exactly 300 rabbit friends. For each rabbit belt, they will receive a payment, totaling enough for 3,000 people. However, because Michio brought so many rabbit friends together, the manager offers him a discount and a bonus. Michio realizes he received the bonus due to his skill, which grants a 30% discount and a 30% bonus. Afterward, Michio and Roxanne return to the 7th floor of the labyrinth. There, they encounter 3 types of monsters. One of them is named Mother Punch. While Roxanne is fighting another monster, Michio loses focus, and the punch comes toward him very quickly. Michio's finger gets hurt, and he feels a lot of pain. However, he manages to move the punch away from himself and kills the monster. Due to the pain and exhaustion, Michio collapses to the ground. Roxanne asks if he is okay. Michio replies that it is just a scratch, but his condition is really bad. He reflects on how his overconfidence almost led to his death. Later, Michio looks at his finger, which is still swollen, even though he completely healed the injury using Durendel's HP recovery skill. It seems that his injury hasn't fully recovered yet. Michio avoids going close to the monsters and instead uses Fireball to attack and kill rabbits from a distance. Meanwhile, Roxanne is also killing rabbits efficiently. Both of them feel very tired and start thinking about expanding their party. At one point, Michio loses 3 rabbits but gains 2 rewards. Roxanne picks up something from the ground, looking very happy, and asks Michio to look at it. In her hand, there is a green crystal. Roxanne hands over a green crystal she picked up to Michio, calling it the Skill Crystal Rabbit. Michio figures out that this bad boy can juice up his empty skill crystals and create gear with the skill locked inside. But, of course, there's a catch. To make it work, he needs a wizard with the blacksmith job, and surprise, he doesn't have a clue where to find one. Later, Michio shows off his yellow magic crystal to Roxanne, who immediately calls bullshit. That crystal was green a second ago, and she wants to know how the hell it changed color. Michio dodges the question like the slippery bastard he is, claiming he has his own method but refuses to explain. He warns her to keep her mouth shut about it, dropping the bomb that yellow magic crystals go for 100,000 nars. Money won't be a problem now, and Michio finally feels like less of a broke-ass loser. He decides they need to hit up Vale City to handle some shit with Alan and mentions beefing up their party. Fighting 4 monsters at once on the 8th floor is starting to feel like suicide, and Michio knows they need more firepower. Roxanne's all for it, saying she's got her own reason to visit. She wants to see the old woman who used to look after her at Alan's mansion. When they roll up to Alan's place, he greets them with his usual smarmy charm, thanking Michio for stopping by. Michio cuts to the chase, saying he needs another party member and asking about buying a blacksmith slave. Alan explains the cold, hard truth: messing with skill crystals is a gamble. Failures can piss off blacksmiths, and considering how valuable the crystals are, it's a recipe for drama. Michio realizes adding a blacksmith might come with more bullshit than he signed up for, but he's not about to back down now. He tells Michio that there are very few blacksmith slaves, and he currently has only one. Alan says that she is a dwarf and not very good at fighting, but dwarfs are very strong, so there's no need to worry. Michio asks Alan to show him the dwarf. Alan says that he will bring her over after getting her ready. Meanwhile, the old woman who took care of Roxanne arrives. Roxanne is very happy to see her, and Michio understands that this is the same woman Roxanne had told him about. This woman took good care of Roxanne, and Roxanne was able to save her. A girl named Sherry also arrives. Alan introduces her and mentions that she is 16 years old. Michio thinks that Sherry and Roxanne are of the same age. Sherry bows in front of Michio, looks at Alan, and says that she has become a level 10 explorer. Michio thinks that she has revealed her identity and tells her that she should not have any problems going inside the labyrinth if she is an explorer. Sherry replies that this is not what she wanted to say. Instead, she reveals that she has failed to become a blacksmith. Michio asks what she means by that. Alan explains that when dwarfs reach level 10 as explorers, they have the option to change their job to blacksmith. Sherry tried but couldn't make the change. Michio realizes that if Sherry cannot become a blacksmith, she might not be useful in the labyrinth. However, Michio also thinks that jobs in this world are learned, just as he learned the hero job and other jobs. He concludes that it might still be possible for Sherry to become a blacksmith in the future if certain conditions are met. Michio decides that he will make Sherry his second party member. Afterward, Sherry leaves so that Alan can discuss the price. Meanwhile, Roxanne talks to the old woman. Alan returns and tells Michio that Sherry is priced at 177,000 nars. Alan explains that this is a discount, the original price was 300,000 nars. Michio agrees to buy her, and Alan thanks him. Michio reflects that his skill, which gives him a 30% discount, worked in his favor. When Roxanne returns, Alan brings Sherry back and hands her over to Michio. Michio thanks Sherry for joining him. Looking at her hair, he comments that it is quite beautiful. Roxanne introduces herself to Sherry and says that she is the number 1 slave. Michio wonders if number 1 slave is a title or position and what its purpose might be. Alan then facilitates the slave contract between Sherry and Michio. Afterward, Michio and the others prepare to leave. Michio adds Sherry to his party, and now, alongside Roxanne and Sherry, the party is complete. Michio notices that Sherry doesn't have any job other than explorer. He doesn't know how to make her a blacksmith yet, so he realizes that they have to explore different ways to make it happen. Michio tells Sherry and Roxanne to return to the curator house. On their way, they visit the Adventurers Guild, where Michio performs a teleportation trick. Sherry is shocked, as she thought Michio might have 2 or more different jobs. When they arrive at the curator house, Michio tells Sherry that she will live with them from now on. Sherry asks Michio if he can use different jobs at the same time. Michio replies that he can and mentions that he has many jobs, but he doesn't have the adventurer job, which is necessary to use field walk for travel. Instead, Michio uses a skill called teleportation spell. He asks Sherry if she knows anyone with many jobs. Sherry explains that people with many jobs are often called God by others. Wasting no time, Michio tells Sherry that she can think of him as the same kind of person. Sherry dismisses this, saying that such stories are made up and don't happen in reality. Michio responds that he expected her to say something like that. Michio then asks Sherry what kind of weapon she would like to use in the labyrinth. Sherry says she is good with a spear, but a long hammer would work just as well. Michio thinks that a hammer would be ideal for a blacksmith. He asks Sherry if she has ever killed a monster with a hammer. Sherry says she hasn't. Michio tells her that she will start using a hammer from now on. Roxanne tells Michio that he can help them by casting spells from behind, which will assist Sherry in fighting monsters. Sherry asks if they are talking about using spells in battle. Michio confirms this, and Roxanne adds that he can use them effectively. Michio then tells Sherry not to share this information with anyone. Sherry assures him that she understands and will not tell anyone. Sherry doesn't hold back as she points out that dwarves might be short, but they're tough as hell. Their strength is what lets them swing those beefy-ass weapons like it's nothing. They hit up a weapon shop, and Sherry's eyes lock onto a massive club. No hesitation, she picks it up like it's a feather and decides it's her new weapon of choice. The thing's got an empty skill slot, which catches Michio's attention. Seeing her casually heft the thing, he mutters that she's a powerhouse. Michio doesn't argue and says they're buying it since she's into it. He then shifts gears and asks if she's up for tagging along to the labyrinth. Sherry doesn't even flinch, saying she's ready to roll whenever. Before they leave, Michio throws another question at her about skill slots. Sherry shrugs and explains that skill slots are a big mystery. Even if people know they exist, no one can actually see them. Michio smirks internally, knowing well he's the one guy who can. Switching topics, Michio brings up the adventurer job, asking if she's got the scoop on it. Sherry starts explaining how it's some kind of legendary gig that belonged to the first emperor himself. The way she talks about it makes it sound like a role wrapped in myth and power. Michio quietly files the info away, already plotting how to make the most of what he knows. Michio is surprised and thinks about how difficult it would be to get a legendary job. Sherry also mentions that no adventurer job has been seen since the first emperor, so people believe there is no job by that name anymore. Michio concludes that the adventurer job is a rare one. After this, they all enter the labyrinth, and they slowly increase their levels. Michio is also thinking about showing Sherry how strong he is. He asks Roxanne to fight with him. Michio starts killing monsters very quickly, and Roxanne helps him. Sherry feels happy because they are fighting so well. Michio also notes that his MP has increased a lot from killing monsters and decides it is time to go back. When they return home, Sherry asks if Michio's teleportation spell can be useful outside the labyrinth too. She points out that she has never seen him use any incantations. Roxanne explains that Michio can use spells and skills without saying incantations. Sherry starts wondering if this is even possible. Then she asks Michio how he killed all the monsters on the 8th floor in one blow. She also asks what his level is. Michio replies that his level is 33, which allows him to kill monsters easily. Roxanne is surprised and mentions that she thought his level was only 20 because that is what he told her earlier. Michio explains that his level has increased a lot since then. Sherry still finds it hard to believe that someone at level 33 can kill monsters in a single blow. Michio thinks to himself that he gains experience points 100 times faster than others, which makes him stronger and allows him to kill monsters easily. He tells Sherry that now she knows everything she wanted to know, but she should not tell anyone about it. Later, Sherry cooks dinner for them, and it looks really good. Sherry asks Michio if he went to the labyrinth before the dinner was ready. Michio explains that he went because his MP was low and he needed to recover it. He tells her that his sword, Durendal, has a method to increase his MP. After killing the monster, Michio remembers something else and asks Roxanne a question. He mentions that her job is beast warrior, and she is a wolfkin. He wonders if all wolfkin have that job. He also points out that Sherry is a dwarf, so she has the blacksmith job. He then asks if humans also have a job that is unique to them. Roxanne and Sherry become a little excited and tell him that humans do have unique jobs. After listening to Roxanne and Sherry, Michio asks what is so special about humans in this world. After some time, Michio finds out that humans have a unique job called sex maniac. Moreover, Michio begins wondering what's wrong with humans. Roxanne and Sherry explain that humans have endless desires that keep growing. Later that night, Michio decides he will now focus on making more slaves. Here, he is half naked and begins making his way toward the bathtub, telling Roxanne and Sherry that he will be waiting for them. After making his way into the bathroom, Michio grows even more excited, realizing what's about to happen. His dream of having two beautiful with him, inside the bathtub is going to come true. Just then, Roxanne and Sherry begins discussing their jug size, not realizing that Michio can clearly hear them. Moreover, Michio is jealous of their conversation, hearing them talking about their body in a naughty manner. Not long after, Roxanne and Sherry make their way into the bathroom as well. Without hesitation, Roxanne loses her towel this time, surprising Sherry. She realizes that her turn will come soon. Michio then approaches Roxanne and begins washing her with soap. Sherry witnesses all this, and the gentle voices coming off of Roxanne only scares her in a good way. Seeing Michio wash Roxanne so intimately gets Sherry in some mood, but she is not willing to express it. After being done with Roxanne, Michio turns to Sherry as she loses her towel, asking him to be gentle. Thereafter, she also acknowledges how small her melons are, but Michio thinks otherwise. He assures Sherry that she has a nice body, explaining that Roxanne's melons are just special. After a while, Roxanne tells Sherry that it's time for them to wash Michio. When Sherry asks how, Roxanne demonstrates by rubbing her body against Michio's. She further tells Sherry that they need to make sure that they get every inch of Michio's body clean. Then, the three enjoy their bath all together, with Roxanne begin on Michio's left side, and Sherry being on his right side. After the bath, later that night, Michio explains to Sherry how things work around here. He tells her how she needs to kiss him every night before going to bed and every morning after waking up. After sharing a kiss with Sherry, Michio notes that Roxanne is standing aside, silent. He becomes a bit weary, thinking that she might be angry, but she turns out not to be. After Sherry leaves, Roxanne gets on top of Michio, ready to have their intimate time. After spending some hardcore time with her, Michio turns to Sherry. He gently tells her that it's her turn now, prompting Sherry to accept her fate. She undresses herself and positions herself on the bed, asking Michio to be gentle. While trying to be careful, Michio happily spends another intimate moment, with Sherry this time. Later, Michio is sleeping as if he has dozed off. Meanwhile, the two girls, Roxanne and Sherry, have a conversation. Roxanne tells Sherry that Michio really enjoyed her company. Sherry and Roxanne then share how they both are looking forward to working with each other. The very next morning, Michio decides to add some more slaves in his party. They then all visit a slave trader, and Michio gives him a lot of money to buy a demi-human slave. Afterward, they go to an auction house and buy another new slave for 640,000 nars. Later, Michio meets an elf whose master asks Michio to take care of his little sister. With this, Michio's party becomes very large.